There is a revolutionary approach to spiritual knowledge developed by Rudolf Steiner that completely transcends the false dichotomy between blind religious faith and materialistic scientific skepticism. Neither blind faith nor cold science, the means is awakening. This extraordinary third way that Steiner called spiritual science or anthroposophy represents a radical synthesis between the investigative rigor of modern science and the recognition of spiritual realities that conventional science systematically ignores due to methodological limitations that confuse the absence of physical evidence with evidence of absence. To understand the profound originality of this revolutionary approach, we must first understand the fundamental historical dilemma that Steiner sought to resolve through decades of meticulous work and disciplined investigation. On the one hand, Western religious traditions are fundamentally based on faith, acceptance of doctrines transmitted by ecclesiastical authorities without the real possibility of direct individual verification through one's own experience. You must believe what a priest, rabbi, or imam says about God, the soul, and the afterlife, because these authorities supposedly have special access to divine truths through sacred revelation or scriptures considered infallible. Questioning these doctrines is often seen as a grave sin or lack of proper faith worthy of condemnation. On the other hand, modern materialistic science, especially since the 19th century when philosophical materialism became dominant, completely rejects any reality that cannot be measured by physical instruments and verified through repeatable experiments in controlled laboratories. Consciousness is reduced to mere epiphenomenon of chemical and electrical brain processes, love to hormonal secretion, spiritual aspirations to evolutionarily advantageous illusions that aided ancestral survival, but have no reference to any transcendent objective reality. Steiner saw both positions as deeply inadequate and fundamentally unsatisfactory for the modern human being who has developed a capacity for critical independent thought through centuries of cultural evolution and cannot simply accept doctrines without rigorous rational examination, but simultaneously experiences undeniable dimensions of existence, profound meaning, transcendent purpose, absolute values, sublime beauty, selfless love, that reductionist materialism cannot adequately explain, nor appropriately honor without distorting their essential nature. Steiner's spiritual science offers brilliant and innovative resolution, applying rigorous scientific method of careful systematic observation, verification through multiple independent investigations, and strict logical reasoning not only to measurable physical phenomena, but also to supersensible spiritual realities, developing organs of spiritual perception through disciplined methodological training that any sincerely dedicated person can undertake with patience and persistence. Neither blind faith, because absolutely everything must be critically investigated and verified through one's own direct experience, rather than accepted on the basis of external authority, nor cold science, because it explicitly recognizes dimensions of reality that completely transcend physical measurable through material instruments. The means is awakening, gradual and systematic development of dramatically expanded consciousness, capable of perceiving invisible spiritual worlds with objective clarity and verifiable accuracy, comparable to ordinary sensory perception of the visible physical world. The absolutely fundamental starting point of Steiner's spiritual science is the crucial recognition that human beings possess latent capacities of supersensitive perception that go far beyond the 5 conventional physical senses, but which remain completely dormant and undeveloped in the vast, overwhelming majority of people, due to lack of systematic appropriate training and exclusive modern cultural focus on quantifiable physical material reality. Steiner likened this situation precisely to a person who is born with anatomically perfect and functional eyes, but is kept in complete darkness throughout their life from birth to death. The physical organs of vision are present and potentially operational, but are never effectively used, and the person remains functionally blind without even knowing what vision is possible or what light exists. Similarly, subtle organs of spiritual perception exist in absolutely every human person without exception as latent potentialities awaiting development, but modern materialistic culture keeps them completely inactive and severely atrophied through systematic denial of their existence and ridicule of any claim to supersensible perception as psychotic delusion or deliberate fraud. Design. The development of these dormant supersensitive organs requires absolutely no special innate mystical gift or arbitrary divine grace capriciously granted to a select few, but rather specific, systematic, and methodological training that Steiner outlined in considerable practical detail in fundamental books, such as How to Acquire Knowledge of the Higher Worlds and The Initiation. This rigorous training involves extremely precise exercises of sustained mental concentration, deliberate cultivation of specific moral qualities, such as absolute truthfulness without compromise, and complete detachment from cherished personal opinions, regular meditative practices performed with iron discipline and rigorous control of emotional life, avoiding dramatic swings between extremes. The process is necessarily gradual and slow, requiring years or often decades of tireless, persistent effort. But Steiner emphatically insisted that it is genuinely accessible to anyone with sufficient determination and a willingness to work systematically without becoming discouraged in the face of inevitable difficulties. This radical democratization of spiritual knowledge, previously reserved for secret initiates, was an absolutely central aspect of their historic mission. Authentic spirituality is not the aristocratic privilege of a few exceptional saints or gifted mystics, but the universal potential of all humanity without exception, patiently awaiting conscious development through disciplined individual effort. Neither blind faith in private revelations from supposedly privileged prophets that must be accepted without question, nor cold materialistic science that categorically denies the possibility of any direct verifiable spiritual knowledge. The means is progressive awakening that absolutely every individual can undertake deliberately through systematic and disciplined self-effort over years of dedicated practice. Steiner described with remarkable precision 3 distinct progressive levels of super-sensible perception that develop sequentially through continued appropriate training, each revealing progressively deeper aspects of reality normally invisible to ordinary limited sensory consciousness. The first level, which he technically called imagination in the specific esoteric sense, very different from common usage, is absolutely not subjective arbitrary fantasy or uncontrolled creative daydreaming, but genuinely objective perception of real archetypal images that faithfully express spiritual realities underlying physical manifestations. A person who patiently develops authentic imaginative perception eventually begins to see the etheric or vital body, the complex matrix of organizing forces that structures and keeps the dense physical body alive and functioning properly. This etheric body is absolutely no convenient poetic metaphor or abstract theoretical concept, but concrete objective reality that can be directly perceived as subtle luminosity, characteristic around all living organisms without exception, with specific colors and dynamic movements that reveal current state of health and underlying vitality. Beyond the individual etheric body of isolated organisms, developed imaginative perception progressively reveals elemental beings actively inhabiting nature, gnomes working in mineral processes, undines in aquatic processes, sylphs in atmospheric processes, salamanders in fiery processes, not as mythological, fanciful personifications, but as objective real intelligences continually operating in fundamental natural elements. The second, qualitatively higher level, which Steiner precisely called inspiration, completely transcends even archetypal images and allows absolutely direct perception of pure essential qualities and universal spiritual laws operating on multiple levels of reality simultaneously. Through developed authentic inspiration, spiritual seeker can deeply understand complex karmic laws that connect successive lives in intricate causal chains, clearly recognize actions of multiple angelic hierarchies, patiently guiding cosmic evolution through eons, and directly access Akashic records, universal cosmic memory that contains complete detailed history of absolutely everything that has happened since manifestation began. Third and highest level, intuition in the specific technical esoteric sense, is extraordinary ability to perceive individual spiritual beings directly in their innermost essence and even temporarily merge consciousness with them to understand their inner experience from within. Through fully developed intuition, the advanced researcher can consciously encounter face-to-face angelic entities of various hierarchies, disembodied human souls between lives, and even aspects of divinity itself in its multiple forms. The demonstrations. Steiner repeatedly emphasized that development of these 3 levels must be absolutely gradual and extremely careful, always rigorously accompanied by simultaneous strengthening of clear, logical thinking and sober, balanced judgment. The very serious danger of premature or unbalanced development is that a person can easily confuse subjective illusions and unconscious psychological projections with genuine objective perceptions, inevitably leading to dangerous delusions and severe psychological instability. Therefore, he absolutely insisted that genuine spiritual training must always include rigorous and relentless cultivation of refined critical discernment and solid anchoring in physical reality through concrete practical work in the everyday material world. The specific methodology of Steiner's spiritual science is rigorously scientific in fundamental structure and procedures, even when investigating invisible supersensible realities. He established clear and non-negotiable methodological principles. First, extremely careful and detailed observation of phenomena, without premature interpretations or projection of preconceived favorite theories. When investigating the etheric body, for example, a disciplined spiritual researcher must patiently observe its manifestations in multiple varied contexts, meticulously noting variations and recurring patterns before formulating any theoretical conclusions. Second, verification through multiple rigorously independent observations, Just as a conscientious physical scientist repeats experiments multiple times, a serious spiritual researcher must confirm insights through repeated investigations at different times and states of consciousness to eliminate errors. Third, systematic comparison with observations from other equally trained researchers to eliminate idiosyncrasies and purely individual errors. Fourth, absolutely rigorous logical reasoning in the interpretation of supersensible observations. Direct perceptions must be placed in a perfectly coherent conceptual context that contradicts neither formal logic nor solidly established facts of conventional physical science. Fifth, full public presentation of results in a clear and verifiable form so that others can constructively criticize and test claims independently. Steiner gave literally thousands of public lectures and wrote dozens of voluminous books precisely to meticulously document his extensive investigations and allow for full public scrutiny. This total radical openness fundamentally distinguished his approach from traditional secret esoteric schools that jealously kept occult teachings accessible only to initiates sworn to absolute silence. Neither blind faith in secret truths transmitted only orally to privileged disciples, nor cold materialistic science that rejects supersensible investigation as impossible on dogmatic principle. The means is methodological awakening that permits rigorously individual verification through systematic development of appropriate perceptual capacities, followed by careful comparison and impeccable logical reasoning about observations obtained through disciplined supersensitive perception. An absolutely crucial aspect of Steiner's spiritual science is its creative and harmonious integration with conventional natural science, rather than hostile rejection of it. Steiner had a deep and genuine respect for the extraordinary achievements of modern science and possessed an extremely solid academic background in physics, chemistry, mathematics, and biology through rigorous university studies. He absolutely did not see material science and spiritual science as fundamentally opposed or mutually exclusive, but as complementary and necessarily cooperative. Material science meticulously investigates the physical aspect of reality, using sophisticated material instruments and limited ordinary sensory consciousness, while spiritual science systematically investigates supersensible aspects of the same unique reality using developed organs of perception and dramatically expanded consciousness. Complete total reality absolutely requires both approaches working harmoniously. For example, when studying specific plants, conventional botanists analyze in detail microscopic cellular structure, complex chemical processes of photosynthesis, molecular genetics, and population ecology using electron microscopes, sophisticated chemical analyses, and careful empirical observation. This research is genuinely valuable and reveals important truths about measurable physical aspects of the plant. But trained spiritual seeker can complement this significantly by directly perceiving plant etheric bodies, archetypal formative forces that organize growth and development according to perfect patterns. S-ideals, specific elemental beings actively working in life processes, and deep cosmic significance of plant as particular expression of creative ideas of high spiritual hierarchies. Both perspectives reveal complementary aspects of the total truth about plants. Steiner consistently applied this integrative approach to virtually every field of human knowledge: medicine, agriculture, education, art, architecture, economics. In each specific case, he deeply respected findings from conventional science, but contextualized them within much broader understandings that explicitly included often overlooked spiritual dimensions. Anthroposophic medicine uses all the diagnoses and treatments of conventional medicine, but complements them with in-depth understanding of multiple subtle bodies and their complex interactions, leading to additional valuable therapies, such as curative eurythmy, medicines prepared according to specific spiritual principles, and careful attention to biographical and karmic aspects of illness. Biodynamic agriculture applies all conventional agronomic knowledge, but adds special preparations made according to recipes that take into account subtle cosmic forces, a planting calendar based on spiritually perceived astronomical rhythms, and treating the farm as a complete living organism. Neither blind faith that rejects science as materialistic and sinful, nor cold science that arrogantly claims to know everything through physical methods alone. The means is integrative awakening that harmoniously combines both perspectives into a more complete and satisfying synthesis, revealing reality in its multidimensional plenitude, including both physical and spiritual aspects in organic unity. The extraordinarily fertile practical applications of Steiner's spiritual science in diverse fields convincingly demonstrate its genuine fertility and real usefulness far beyond sterile, abstract theoretical speculation. Waldorf pedagogy, solidly grounded in a deep anthroposophical understanding of child development through multiple phases, explicitly recognizes that a child is not just a biological organism and psychological system, but an immortal spiritual being in a process of gradual progressive incarnation. Curriculum is carefully structured to respect distinct phases corresponding to changes in subtle bodies. First 7 years focus on imitation and harmonious development of dense physical body through creative free play and varied artistic activities. Second 7 years work on rich imagination and feeling, as etheric body progressively frees itself. Third phase develops abstract thinking when astral body matures sufficiently. This holistic approach produces extraordinary measurable results. Independent studies show that Waldorf graduates often have exceptional creativity, the ability to think independently, and a strong sense of purpose. Anthroposophic medicine treats the patient as an integrated totality of body, soul, and spirit, considering complete biography and possible karmic causes of illnesses, in addition to immediate physical symptoms. Therapies include medicines prepared through processes that preserve vital forces, healing eurythmy that uses movements to harmonize subtle bodies, art therapies, and biographical conversations. Anthroposophical clinics successfully treat a wide range of conditions. Biodynamic agriculture produces demonstrably superior food, improves soil health, and creates sustainable farms functioning as balanced organisms. These examples demonstrate that spiritual science is not sterile philosophy, but generates verifiable, practical applications that concretely improve lives. Neither blind faith remaining in abstractions, nor cold science recognizing only utilitarian materialism. The means is awakening, transforming spiritual understanding into creative action, improving civilization through profound insights into human and cosmic nature applied systematically across all domains of individual and collective life, creating completely new possibilities for integral human flourishing. The deep social and ethical dimension of Steiner's spiritual science deserves especially careful attention because it is often overlooked by those who view anthroposophy as a mere system of abstract metaphysical beliefs disconnected from practical life. Steiner saw spiritual knowledge as absolutely inseparable from concrete social responsibility and fundamental ethical transformation. Genuine perception of spiritual realities should naturally and inevitably lead to profound recognition of the fundamental unity of all humanity beneath superficial diversities, and therefore to practical commitment to social justice, genuine equality, and fraternal cooperation. His revolutionary ideas of social trimembration, separation works appropriated from economic, political, and cultural spheres with distinct principles specific to each, were based directly on spiritual insights into authentic human nature and balanced, healthy social organization. Economic sphere should operate according to fraternity and cooperation, aiming to meet the needs of all members of society. The political sphere should be strictly based on equal rights for absolutely everyone without exception. Cultural sphere should promote freedom of thought, expression, and individual spiritual development. Steiner argued convincingly that modern social pathologies fundamentally result from destructive confusion of these spheres, economy dominating politics and culture corrupting both, or totalitarian state controlling absolutely everything, stifling freedom and creativity. Truly healthy society requires appropriate autonomy of each sphere operating according to its own specific principle. Ethically, spiritual science grounds morality not in arbitrary external commands of religious authorities, nor in cold utilitarian calculations of likely consequences, but in moral intuition that arises from direct perception of the essential nature of specific situations. A spiritually developed person does not need external rules because they directly perceive what the situation requires through expanded empathy and understanding of the complex karmic context. This ethics of freedom that Steiner meticulously developed in Philosophy of Freedom proposes that true morality emerges from love for specific action born of clear insight into its intrinsic necessity, not from mechanical obedience to abstract norms or fear of punishment. Steiner also repeatedly emphasized that spiritual development without parallel moral development is extremely dangerous. Supersensitive powers in the hands of a selfish or cruel person would be instruments of immense harm. Therefore, genuine training always emphasizes rigorous moral purification, parallel to the development of expanded perception. The multiple contemporary obstacles to the development of spiritual science are both internal and external and must be acknowledged with brutal honesty. Internally, omnipresent dominant materialist culture systematically conditions people from childhood to identify reality exclusively with measurable physicality and automatically dismiss experiences that do not fit this narrow paradigm as illusory or pathological. Conventional education trains thinking only for the analysis of physical phenomena and does not develop the imaginative and intuitive capacities necessary for authentic spiritual perception at all. Modern life's frenetic pace leaves little time or energy for the contemplative practices required by serious spiritual training. Constant bombardment of stimuli through digital technology fragments attention and makes it difficult to cultivate sustained deep concentration. Furthermore, powerful social stigma in educated and scientific circles associates interest in spirituality with primitive gullibility, dangerous irrationality, or deliberate fraud, discouraging serious investigation. Externally, there are few genuine training centers with truly competent instructors capable of guiding students through delicate developments. Much of what presents itself as anthroposophy is diluted, distorted, or downright fraudulent. Distinguishing genuine teaching from superficial imitation requires discernment that beginners do not possess. New Age movements have commercialized and trivialized esoteric concepts, creating confusion and associating genuine spirituality with superficial fashion. There are also real dangers of unbalanced development. People who force open perception prematurely without preparation can experience severe psychological problems, including hallucinations, delusions of grandeur, emotional instability, and psychosis. Despite these serious obstacles, there are substantial reasons for optimism. Growing dissatisfaction with materialism and the search for meaning creates an opening for serious spiritual approaches. Accumulating evidence of phenomena such as near-death experiences is gradually eroding materialist dogmatism. Successful practical applications demonstrate the value of spiritual insights. The urgent contemporary relevance of spiritual science becomes increasingly apparent as multiple crises converge, demanding fundamental transformation. The ecological crisis of climate change, loss of biodiversity, and environmental degradation fundamentally results from a materialist view that sees nature as dead resources to be exploited. Anthroposophical approach, recognizing Earth's spiritual life, underlies deep ecological ethics and sustainable practices. Crisis of meaning, manifesting itself in epidemics of depression, anxiety, addictions, and suicide, results from materialistic vision that reduces being as humans to biochemical machines without transcendent purpose. Spiritual science offers understanding of life as an immortal soul's journey through multiple incarnations with clear evolutionary purpose. Political crisis of extreme polarization results from lack of recognition of fundamental spiritual unity. Perception of spiritual realities reveals that all souls are members of a single human family. Educational crisis systems, producing conformity rather than creativity, result from lack of recognition of spiritual dimensions of child development. Waldorf pedagogy offers an alternative by developing a complete human being, neither blind faith offering only empty consolations, nor cold science that exacerbates problems through reductionist materialism. The means is awakening, allowing humanity to face crises with spiritual wisdom integrated with practical competence. Spiritual science also offers a comprehensive framework for understanding human and cosmic evolution that integrates paleontological discoveries with spiritual insights into the development of consciousness through the ages. Steiner did not reject biological evolution, but contextualized it within the broader evolution of consciousness and form. He described how humanity passed through successive epochs with drastically different modes of consciousness. In ancient Lemuria, humanity possessed much less dense bodies and dream consciousness that perceived spiritual realities directly, but had little separate individual consciousness. In Atlantis, bodies became denser and consciousness more individualized, but still maintained natural perception of etheric forces and elemental beings. After the catastrophe that destroyed Atlantis, post-Atlantic humanity gradually lost ancient natural clairvoyance, as bodies became completely dense and consciousness focused exclusively on the physical. This loss was not decline, but evolutionary necessity. Only by developing completely physically focused consciousness and losing automatic spiritual perception could humanity develop abstract thought, science, technology, and autonomous individuality. But current materialistic phase is temporary. Humanity is now developing new form of conscious clairvoyance through self-effort rather than natural endowment. Spiritual science is the vanguard of this transformation, a method through which modern scientific consciousness can reintegrate spiritual perception without losing achievements of clear thinking and autonomy. Steiner saw modern civilization at a critical turning point where materialism has reached extremes, and humanity must begin a conscious rise to spirituality or risk catastrophic decline. The concrete practice of spiritual science involves specific exercises that any sincere person can begin immediately. Concentration exercise involves focusing complete attention for 5 to 10 minutes daily on a chosen, simple object. It can be crystal, plant, geometric symbol, observing each detail carefully and reflecting on deeper meaning without allowing digression. This strengthens control over thought. Thought control exercise involves choosing specific thought and following it logically through a sequence of related ideas without the intrusion of irrelevant associations. For example, think about the process from seed planting to harvest, maintaining a logical chain without distractions. This cultivates mental discipline. Exercising feelings control involves maintaining equanimity in the face of experiences that would normally provoke strong emotional reactions. Not suppressing emotions, but observing them without being dominated. Practice responding to joys and sorrows with balanced inner serenity. Exercising positivity involves deliberately seeking something good or true, even in apparently negative situations, developing the ability to perceive positive potential. An openness exercise involves cultivating an attitude of receptivity to new experiences and unknown ideas without premature rejection based on ingrained prejudices. These 5 fundamental exercises, practiced faithfully over months and years, gradually transform the structure of the soul in preparation for genuine, supersensible experiences. In addition to these, Steiner recommended regular meditation on specific texts, detailed retrospective review of daily life before bed, and intensive cultivation of moral qualities, especially love of truth, courage in the face of the unknown, and devotion to the good. Crucially, spiritual development is never just internal, but must always be balanced with practical work in the physical world and service to other human beings. Mysticism that withdraws from life to seek only inner experiences is pathological and dangerous. Healthy development integrates expansion of inner consciousness with greater effectiveness in practical outer actions. The complex relationship between science and spiritual relationship with earlier esoteric traditions is nuanced and deserves careful consideration. Steiner deeply studied Rosicrucianism, Theosophy, Kabbalah, alchemy, and Christian mysticism, absorbing valuable knowledge but also criticizing serious limitations. He viewed ancient traditions as having possessed genuine spiritual knowledge, but presented in forms no longer appropriate for modern consciousness. Obscure symbolism, complex allegories, and insistence on secrecy were suitable for ancient consciousnesses that thought imagistically, but modern humanity that has developed clear, abstract thinking needs direct, logical, and open presentations. Steiner modernized esotericism by translating symbolism into clear concepts, replacing the authority of occult masters with individual verification, and publishing openly what was held secretly. This democratization was revolutionary. At the same time, Steiner did not arbitrarily invent but based teachings on clairvoyant investigations of his own that often confirmed kernels of truth in ancient traditions while correcting distortions. For example, reincarnation and karma have existed in Hinduism and Buddhism for millennia, but Steiner refined understanding by showing precisely how karma operates, how souls plan lives in the spiritual world, and how free will coexists with karmic determination. The challenges and criticisms faced are serious. Scientific skeptics question whether supersensitive perceptions are genuinely objective or merely subjective projections. How to distinguish clairvoyance from hallucination? Steiner would respond that even sensory perception is subject to illusions, but we have developed methods of verification. Same methods apply to supersensitive perception. True clairvoyance produces consistent observations among trained researchers, confirms itself through repeated investigations, and leads to testable insights through practical applications. Orthodox religious people criticize Anthroposophy as Gnostic. Steiner would respond that original Christianity contained an esoteric dimension suppressed by the institutional church. Materialists argue that absence of physical evidence is evidence of absence. Steiner would respond that absence of physical evidence is not evidence of absence when we talk about realities that are by definition non-physical. Internal critics sometimes accuse Steiner of dogmatism. This criticism is well-founded. The tendency to turn insights into dogma afflicts all movements. Steiner warned against this, insisting that each person must verify teachings through personal experience. Spiritual science remains the most ambitious attempt to create a bridge between scientific knowledge and spiritual wisdom, between objective investigation and inner transformation. Its relevance has intensified as humanity faces existential challenges demanding fundamental transformation. Neither blind faith that retreats to pre-modern certainties, nor cold science that denies essential dimensions of human experience. The means is awakening, disciplined development of expanded perceptual capacities, allowing individual verification of spiritual realities through direct experience, integration of discoveries into coherent, rational understanding, and application of insights into practical transformation of all dimensions of life. This path between invisible and real remains open for anyone willing to undertake the journey with the seriousness, patience, and dedication necessary to cross the threshold that separates ordinary consciousness from expanded perception, where spiritual realities reveal themselves in all their objectivity and transformative power. Awakening awaits those courageous to question limitations of materialism without lapsing into credulity, honor scientific rigor while transcending arbitrary limits, and devote sustained effort to the development of latent capacities that lie dormant in every human being awaiting determined will to blossom into perception, completely transforming understanding of reality and possibilities of conscious human existence by actively participating in cosmic evolution through eons of progressive development toward full realization of divine potential that constitutes humanity's ultimate destiny as co-creators, collaborating with spiritual hierarchies in the transformation of cosmos, in manifestation of divine love and wisdom, permeating existence from matter to pure spirit and unity. The future potential of spiritual science depends on several crucial interrelated factors that will determine whether this extraordinary approach will flourish or remain marginalized. First, and most fundamental, development of more truly competent researchers capable of independently verifying and extending investigations initiated by Steiner through rigorously disciplined and methodologically trained supersensitive perception of their own. Second, greater CR integration, active and respectful of conventional science through open constructive dialogue and carefully structured collaborative projects, where appropriate and mutually beneficial. Third, continued and systematic attention to practical applications that demonstrate concrete and verifiable value of spiritual insights through measurable results in education, medicine, agriculture, and other essential areas of human life. Fourth, avoid paralyzing dogmatization by maintaining genuine critical openness and a sincere willingness to revise understandings when new evidence demands it. Fifth, clear and accessible communication that presents spiritual science to diverse contemporary audiences without unnecessary excessive jargon or deliberate obscurity that alienates sincere people unfamiliar with specialized esoteric terminology. The fundamental promise of Steiner's spiritual science remains deeply relevant and urgently needed for the monumental challenges of today's era characterized by converging crises. In a historical time of existential crisis of meaning where sterile materialism leaves souls deeply hungry and religious fundamentalism offers narrow certainties often associated with dangerous intolerance, Anthroposophy proposes a balanced middle path of rigorous and verifiable spiritual knowledge, accessible through disciplined and patient individual effort rather than passive dependence on external authorities or privileged revelations. Neither blind faith that accepts without question and stifles critical independent thought, nor cold materialistic science that arrogantly denies essential dimensions of human experience and reduces everything to mechanical physical processes. The truly liberating means is the progressive awakening of latent capacities of dramatically expanded perception through systematic methodological training, allowing every sincerely dedicated person to directly verify spiritual realities through immediate own experience, integrating personal discoveries into perfectly coherent, rational understanding that simultaneously honors both scientific rigor and spiritual depth in living synthesis that can effectively, completely transform human civilization through fertile practical applications in absolutely every domain of individual and collective life, creating radically renewed future culture where narrow materialism and naive spiritualism are no longer opposites. Irreconcilable but necessary complementary aspects of comprehensive, unified knowledge about the total nature of multidimensional reality that includes both gross physical and subtle spiritual phenomena in harmonious organic continuity, investigable through methods rigorously appropriate to each specific level of manifestation from densest physical matter to transcendent highest archetypal realms, all genuinely accessible to sufficiently developed human consciousness through patient and persistent effort over years or decades of disciplined practice and deliberate cultivation of moral qualities absolutely necessary for genuine spiritual perception, based fundamentally on love, disinterested in objective truth, and profound respect for reality in all its dimensions from physical to divine, thus enabling the modern human being to finally reconcile legitimate spiritual aspirations with rigorous demands of clear, rational thought that best characterizes achievement of contemporary consciousness without sacrificing either depth of authentic spiritual experience nor methodological rigor of scientific investigation, but harmoniously integrating both into dynamic living unity that completely transcends limitations of both traditional religious faith based on external authority and dogmatic scientific materialism through the revolutionary third way of individually verifiable direct knowledge that Steiner called science spiritual, and which represents extraordinary yet largely unrealized possibility of radical transformation of human civilization through systematic expansion of consciousness that allows consciously perceiving and working with spiritual dimensions of existence that have always been present, operating silently but remained invisible to consciousness, focused exclusively on dense physical manifestations, now awaiting rediscovery through methods that Steiner developed and extensively documented, allowing any sincerely dedicated person to undertake journey of gradual awakening of dormant, supersensitive organs of perception in every human being as evolutionary potential awaiting only firm decision and persistent effort to manifest into full ability to perceive spiritual realities with clarity and objectivity comparable to the sensorial perception of the physical world, thus opening completely new horizons of professional knowledge, world, transformative experience, and creative action that can transform not only the individual life of a dedicated practitioner, but through the accumulated effects of many awakened individuals, eventually transform fundamental structures of entire civilization toward the progressively fuller manifestation of spiritual potentialities latent in humanity as a whole, evolving through the ages toward the glorious destiny of full cosmic consciousness and capacity for truly free creation at levels that completely transcend current limitations, but that can already be glimpsed through the initial development of spiritual perception, revealing that reality is immensely vaster, rich, and deeply meaningful than narrow materialism allows us to recognize, and that the human being possesses within him extraordinary capacities for direct knowledge and conscious transformation, just awaiting awakening through the path of systematic development that Rudolf Steiner's spiritual science illuminates with unprecedented clarity and precision, offering an invaluable resource for all those who seek truth about the nature of existence and the realization of divine human potential. Neither blind faith nor cold science, the means is the awakening that transforms civilization through expanded consciousness, integrating science and spirituality in living synthesis, revealing totality of multidimensional reality, accessible to all willing to undertake journey of disciplined development through persistent practice over years of effort dedicated to inner and outer transformation.